Right, so we're expecting a few more, but I think we'll begin for this evening because we've got a lot to cover and some really exciting speakers, and then also time to discuss some of the points raised. So, first of all, just to say, yes, I'm Sandra from Dorset, Can, and hosting this evening making food resilience irresistible. So that is the theme for the evening, and you're very welcome this evening. I'm just going to introduce very brief etiquette for Zoom that we have here at Dorset Can, which is that the wisdom of the whole group is valued and respected. I think it's important to reiterate, and that we want to create a collaborative atmosphere where we're focused on solutions to problems and how we can find common ground. When we do challenge each other, we do it respectfully and to encourage each other to do better. So, in the spirit of being able to hear many people's voices over the evening, could I ask you to keep questions, and we do hope there will be questions, but to keep questions to the point and concise as far as possible, and also maybe relevant to actually what's being discussed, because it's such a huge topic and there's many of us here this evening. If you could make sure that you're on mute when you're not actually speaking, that would be helpful. And when it comes to questions, or if you want to have a reaction to something that's being said, do use the reactions button at the bottom of your screen to raise your hand. And there are other things you can do as well. I think set balloons off or cry, but just raising the hand would be great. Okay, so I wanted to say that our speakers tonight will be sharing ideas about how to listen and how to connect effectively with people and with communities, as well as about what they may need in their next steps as successful projects. And there's a recent report from the AFN which talks about how deep community engagement is a driver of food systems change, and that local food partnerships, of which we are one, the Feeding Dorset Partnership, rank community engagement as their top enabler of progress. So we wanted to really listen to some of the stories and have some of the conversations about successful ventures, specifically in terms of attracting people to finding food resilience irresistible. So I'm not going to go on anymore, but I am going to invite the first speaker of this evening, who I would ask you to introduce yourself, if you would, but it's Alan Chambers from Tumbledown Farm in Weymouth, who's going to introduce his project and tell us more about it.
Lovely. Thank you very much for inviting me. My name is Alan Chambers. I am the site manager of Tumbledown Community Growing. What we're going to do is we're going to share some slides. Now, I apologize before I start for this because there's way too many slides. So anybody who's feeling really tired, get yourself a pillow. And I'll try and rush through the slides that give you a quick introduction to what we are, what we do, and what we've done so far, if that's okay. And then I'll move on to how we've dealt with working with people, getting people engaged, and what we're trying to do for the future. So, so Andrew, if you're happy to share the presentation, please.
Can you see that?
I can see a black screen at the moment. I can see nothing else. That's it. That's the one.
Got it.
Right.
Good.
Perfect. So the next slide then, please. Which will be, when you see it, is a map of where we are, which I'll describe so we can hop straight over it if it comes up. Is this working or?
It's slow, I'm afraid.
Right.
It's because it's online rather than on my machine.
Right.
No, this is going to be slow because of because it's uploading and downloading at the same time.
Right. Okay. So if I get the presentation up on my screen then and then share, does that work?
It should do.
So that's not working either, is it? How about that? Is that sharing?
Not yet.
Interesting.
I'm going to try once more, Alan, in case this is better. Can you see that now?
Yes.
Yes.
Aha, there we go. Right, so that's where we are in Weymouth. So we're kind of in the middle of Weymouth between Radipole and we're on the edge of Radipole Lake. So if you look at that map there, we are the kind of left-hand side of the map as you look at it. To the right, that's Radipole Lake. So we're not that far. We're about 20 minutes walk from the centre of Weymouth. If you pop onto the next slide, please. Yeah, good. So the history of the place, just a quick history lesson. 1920, Weymouth, all of the land that we were on was tidal, and they blocked off Weymouth Harbour, the end of Weymouth Harbour, and created Radipole Lake. And at that time, the local council purchased Tumbledown Farm alongside all of the land that was then inundated to make Radipole Lake. The aim was to put a railway in that came from Abbotsbury to export stone from a quarry in Abbotsbury all the way through to the harbour, and then the harbour, and that never happened. So basically, for 100 years, Tumbledown was a farm owned by the council but rented out to farmers. And then that was handed back to us in 2015, and Weymouth Council took control of it from 2019 onwards. So next slide, please, Andrew. And what have we got there? So that's what we look like at the moment with all the rain. So we've got 27 acres, about a quarter of it at the moment is underwater because it is meant to be underwater. It is a floodplain. It floods every year. But we've also got some, and that area is an SSSI. We've got some woodland, we've got some wildflower meadows, and we've got a small area of cultivable land in the middle, which is where a lot of the activity at the moment happens. So next slide, please. I'm rushing through these as quick as I can. Jolly good. So I'll brief when the council took over, I was employed 4 years ago, and the brief at that time was vaguely making the site more accessible to people, improve biodiversity across the whole site, turn the central part of it into a place where people could do meaningful activities together to improve general well-being, and provide educational activities for as wide a range of people as possible. So that's the kind of general brief for us. Next slide, please, Andrew. And the next one, please. So when we started, we had one building that was a pig shed that was turned into the place where the volunteers congregated. All of the other buildings look like this. So if you go on to the next slide as well, please. So they were tumbling down. So tumble-down buildings. They were very, very badly built by farmers. I hope there's no farmers here. But the kind of building standards were like this, held up by props and bits of wood and all second-hand materials. So we took all of that down ourselves. And on this site, next one, please. We put this nice new barn up, which is now our woodworking shop. So we've got a little woodwork shop in there that people come in and help us to build anything that we need in. Next slide, please, Andrew. So we're going to whip through these really quickly. Right, and then on this site, there was a whole load of little barns here that were absolutely full of asbestos. We again took these down. The story is we got a quote to take all of these down that was £6,000. And we then went to our volunteers and said, look, we've got a quote for £6,000. Do you think we could do this ourselves? And they said yes. And basically we did the whole thing for 500 quid and had a hell of a lot of fun. So in terms of engaging people, that's one of the first lessons that we had, is if you have big, meaningful, interesting projects and you get people involved before you even get to the point where you're growing any food, that engages a wide range of people before you start. So big, interesting, meaningful projects people love, and if they can see a result at the end of it, then you get more people involved. So on the site where we removed those barns with the asbestos, we now have a large building which houses a classroom, proper accessible toilets, and a teaching kitchen. Now the teaching kitchen, next slide please, looks like this. It's got 5 workstations and a teaching unit where the teacher can actually see everybody within the room, which is quite important. And we have groups in there where we basically look at the stuff that we grow, we process in there, and people then use the teaching kitchen to actually make meals and other produce. The classroom is a decent size. We can hold about 40 people in there. And what we found is we were struggling to get a lot of people involved where people had any additional needs until we had decent toilets. So we had kind of really rough portaloos. Having the accessible toilets made a big difference to the number of people who would come and use our site meaningfully. So just whipping through what else we've got on site. We've got a forest school. And in the forest school, we've got an open fire pit area, so we can do some cooking outside and get people engaged in outdoor activities there as well. Next one, we've got an orchard where we've got 36 apple trees, 36 nut trees, and we're about to extend that even further. In total now, we've got about 100 apple trees that are about 4 or 5 years old and coming to maturity. We are completely organic. We take all of the green waste that is produced by the town council and a lot of wood chip from local tree surgeons as well. So we make our own compost and we use all of it. Saves the council quite a lot of money in terms of they would have to pay to get rid of it. We use it on the site directly. Next one, please. Biodiversity. One of the requirements in the plan was to increase biodiversity. So we've got a roughly two acre meadow at the very top of the field, which we are basically mowing every year to reduce the fertility of the soil and increase the variety of flowers there. There was a picture on that last slide of a bee orchid, and we did have one bee orchid there, which I found once. Got very excited, took some pictures, and then I could never find it again when I went back. So we have once had a bee orchid. That's all I can say about the diversity there. Sorry, next one. And then in the centre of the site, there's about 2 acres of land that is cultivable. Now I say it's cultivable. It is north facing. It is clay, and it has been compacted for the last 100 years by grazing. So prior to us having this, it was a stables and there were horses all over this. So we've got heavily compacted clay soil all over the place, and we're spending a lot of time just improving the soil with a lot of organic waste, organic materials. So next slide, please, Andrew. And this is us improving the fertility of soil. So every year so far, we've mowed the top meadow. We've spread all of the hay from the top meadow over the 1 acre field below it. And then on top of that, we put a 6-inch mulch of wood chip, and we've grown very little in it in the first 3 years. The aim being to turn this into decent cultivable land and improve the drainage, because we've had a big issue with lots of water flowing over the top of the compacted soil. So what we're doing there is making the soil a lot better and having a big sponge where we've got lots of water that gets soaked up there and doesn't run down the hill. So last year we grew potatoes on there. The potatoes were grown in no dig beds on top of the hay. with cardboard on top of the hay, and then our own compost on top of those in trenches. So we are starting to produce things organically with no mechanization whatsoever at the moment. And you can see everything's done by hand. Everything's done as a group with everyone involved at the same time. I was saying about large projects earlier and involving different groups within the community within that, at the same time that we've got wider groups of volunteering. I didn't say that very clearly, but this is a picture, a poor picture, but it's a picture of the guys from the Stockholm Bibby who were seeking asylum, who were all young, fit guys who were bored, frustrated and needing to get outdoors and do some stuff. So we basically had them come along, and they worked alongside all of our normal volunteers and some of our young groups that came in as well to dig this very large pond, which is now quite a nice feature of the site. So next one, please. We've planted about over 3,000 trees over the last 4 years in hedges and in forests, a little extension to the woodland at the top. We've got our primary trees on the site are ash and elm, therefore everything's dying. So it's been quite important to us to replace all of these trees. The other thing is lots of things that are happening on the site are basically aimed at giving people meaningful occupation. So what we want is people growing food and then cooking it, and it won't just be cooking it inside the kitchen with the electric cookers. We also wanted to do a bit outside so people can experience cooking outside in different methods. So we are building an outdoor kitchen with a pizza oven as well. Now this looks really good. That's the first version of the pizza oven, but that lasted about 2 months. Because I had the bright idea that when we were digging the pond, we found a load of clay, and I thought we could use the clay to make the pizza oven, but there's clay and there's clay, and that's the wrong kind of clay to make a pizza oven. So the pizza oven fell apart within 3 months. The other thing is making the site accessible. So it's sometimes we were having groups in. We were having Westfield School used to come in, or still do come in, and they have a number of their pupils have limited mobility. Some were using wheelchairs, and we were finding that we couldn't include whole groups if we didn't have accessible facilities. So we did build a concrete ramp with a local business that helped us to fund and do that. And we used the volunteers to build us a raised bed area where we could get wheelchairs in, with benches that the wheelchairs could get underneath, and they could be involved in potting on and sowing seeds and doing all the rest of the activities. We've got schools that border us. So we've started to have a relationship with the school, whereby the school come down every year for several lessons, and we've got some standard lessons that we give on basically germination and what's a seed. And this is us looking at some broad beans with some spy glasses, with some magnifying glasses to watch them, to look at the shoots. So getting kids involved at a very, very young age is quite useful, and getting those formal links. So that's the kind of presentation that I give to everybody, just about kind of what we're doing and what we're about, really. And then I just kind of put down a few thoughts on what's worked and what hasn't for us so far. So for us, I feel a little bit of a fraud being here talking about food resilience, but food production for us is kind of secondary to the community involvement. So we're not growing large volumes of food, we're not selling large volumes of food, but we are involving lots of people in the process of making the land good enough to grow good food, and then growing the food on that site. So food's a bit of a byproduct, but we are also teaching people that link between, well, if you make the soil good, and if you get lots of creatures living in the soil, and if you've got lots of bees around, you can link the environment around you to the quality of the food that's coming out of the ground. So that's quite kind of important to us. So if we're then getting people interested in, the quality of the food, the fact that it's local, the fact that it's seasonal, and the fact that it's going to be better for you than stuff that's imported from all over the world, then that, in my view, is a thing worth doing. What we've found is that, speaking to other groups, they struggle to attract volunteers because, and I think the advantage we've got is that we've got enough space there to not just concentrate on food production. We can then look at habitat management, we can look at physical improvement of the site. And if you get people involved in something wider than just the horticulture, I think that gets a wider range of people in who then do get involved in the horticulture, because that's another activity that's going in on the site. Be completely inclusive. Now, what we've tried to do is we've said yes to everybody, almost everybody who wants to come. So on our general volunteering days, today, more than half of the people that came on a general volunteering day had an additional need. So we had people with mental health problems, we had people with Asperger's, we had people with various different disabilities. And we don't differentiate between any of those groups. So we have people who come with their carers and work alongside any of our standard volunteers. And you wouldn't know if you came in who was somebody who had a disability and didn't have a disability. So it's completely working together. There's one famous day where we built a stage, and I had a nuclear scientist working alongside two individuals from the Lantern who were basically having this conversation about who'd been in the worst children's care home. And the nuclear scientist was kind of just had never heard a conversation like it before, and was getting to learn a lot about the kind of the things that have happened to these individuals that led them to where they are in life. And I think that in itself, alongside all of the food production, just makes people appreciate the community that they're in the widest sense. We've got a friends group, and the friends group has been extremely valuable and extremely helpful. So we are Weymouth, the site is run by Weymouth Town Council, but the friends group is an autonomous group that helps with fundraising because they're not a town council. But they've also taken on organising some of the events, organising where we go out and advertise ourselves at shows and craft fairs and things like that. And they've also got two splinter groups now. So they've got the Jams and Chutneys group. So they have taken on buying all the materials for producing the jams and chutneys, labelling them. They do all of the sales, they do all the marketing, and they take them out to places to sell them. So that's kind of their little project, which I have very little to do with, apart from saying, can you do this, please? And there's something coming up that you might be interested in. So giving them a project and something that they are completely autonomously running, rather than helping Weymouth Town Council to do that, has basically drawn in more and more people into that. They've also now just started a crafty supporters, they're called, and they've started their own little group where people are doing craft things that then again help the things that we're trying to market, that we're trying to sell. So for instance, for the jams and chutneys, they've made little doily tops for them, they've made all the labels, they've made banners for the sales where we sell things on for the tabletops. And they're doing plant pots, decoupage, I think it's called, where they kind of stick things on the outside of clay pots, which we can then sell plants in. So all of this is adding value, but it's also drawing more people in who don't just have an interest in growing food, but when they're on site, we do get them involved in harvesting food, sitting down communally and eating with all of the other volunteers who are involved in growing the food. So again, it's more than just the food growing, it's that kind of community base around all of that. So I haven't been looking at where I am with time. Am I okay?
Just got a couple more minutes.
Right, I'll rush you a bit more then. Free community events. We run four free community events each year for families, children and families, and we theme them, and we do things like the sounds of summer, games, we do spring nature hunts, and basically it's free, so lots of people come, and we make it really interesting, and we kind of give them lots of different things to do. And every time we've done one, the following one has had more people. So we're at 230 people for the last event that we held, which was fantastic. And then those people come back and volunteer and tell their friends about it. So that's been a really, really useful thing to do. So money gets in the way sometimes. So if you're not charging money and you can afford to do these free events, it does benefit you by drawing lots and lots of people in. We've facilitated the use of the site by other organisations for not a lot of money. Again, if you can get scouts, guides, schools in. Schools have been quite interesting. It's quite hard to get schools out of schools. So you have to work quite hard at putting something together that's quite structured. So our most successful event last year was our archaeology event, where we got the Dorset diggers in and we basically dug some holes with the children on sites that we thought would be, my kind of hypothesis was a Roman villa at the top of the hill overlooking the view, because that's where I would have placed my Roman villa if I was a self-respecting Roman at the time. And we dug a hole and had a look, and we found some stones and absolutely nothing else of interest whatsoever. But the whole event and all of the things and the history that we looked at around that had got the children very interested, and then they told their parents about it, and then again local people started coming down and having a look themselves. I've said that people love a project. The bigger the project, the more interesting the project, the more you can target to different organizations, the better. Family and multi-generation events. So one of the things we're trying to do at the minute, and I've been talking today to the family advisors, is trying to get educational sessions for adults and their children. So the next cookery sessions that we're trying to do will be family cooking, so parents cooking with their children, and then that helps get all of the generations involved. Next slide, and I am going to speed up because I'm trying to go as fast as I possibly can. Right, so things we struggle with. I think I know what people want, but sometimes the things that I think people want don't work. So what I'm trying to do is work out how we get in contact with the people that would benefit most from what we're trying to do via the commissioners. And that also sometimes comes with money as well. So a bad example, I ran a mental health day year before last, and I put loads of effort in. We got a drumming circle, we got 2 yoga groups, we got a herbalist came in to look at herbal plants and things, and targeted it at mental health for Mental Health Week. And I did it in the morning thinking this would be brilliant for people, and we only got about 10 people turned up despite all of that effort. And that was me making the kind of judgment that would be good, what people wanted, and not involving the people that would bring people there, if that makes sense. So target the people that know what people want and then can bring people in. Sometimes we've produced lots of food and haven't quite known what to do with it, so we've been growing things almost for the sake of it. So we gave stuff to the Nest the first year. We've had a little honesty box shop at the top, which has been quite useful, and people have come and bought that. But sometimes I'm growing things because I like it, and I'm not sure if I'm targeting it right. And it would be really nice if we could link up with other providers, because we can grow lots of potatoes and courgettes, but we can't grow any broccoli because it just doesn't work on our site. So how can we link up with other people to say, we'll grow this, you grow that, and let's join up and market it together? Because we haven't got enough that we could do a veg box scheme, for instance, because we can't grow the volume or the range of food that we would need to do that. And then I'll better wind up. Can we go on to the next slide just very quickly? So my other thing is never miss an opportunity to get people involved and advertise what you're doing. And therefore the next slide and the next one is you're all very welcome to come and join us every Monday and every Friday from 10 o'clock till 1 o'clock. Everyone is welcome. And if anybody wants to come and have a look around, just give me a call and we'll do your tour of the site and a cup of tea, and you'd be very welcome to join us. Okay, sorry, that's gone on a little bit too long.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Alan. That's, I think, sort of round of applause really on that one. Really, what a wonderful presentation. And I feel as though I've already learnt so much about, well, it's right from the beginning about involving people even before it starts in terms of getting the site ready and stuff. Just fantastic. Thank you so much. So yes, lots of hands, everything happening. So let's move on to Sheri, Ahmet and Rachel Millson from Edible Bridport, which I think should follow really well from Alan's presentation. Are you ready?
We are.
We are,
Yes.
yes.
As ready as we'll ever be.
Are the slides ready?
Yeah. Are we
Thank you.
okay to share the slides? Okay.
Hi, thank you for inviting us to speak this evening. My name's Sheri Ahmet and I'm with Rachel Millson. We are both members of Bridport Food Matters and we are talking tonight about making food resilience irresistible. Before we head on to talking about the Edible Bridport project, we'd just like to introduce you to the background a little bit. And our mothership, I like to call it, is Bridport Food Matters. It is a communication information network and it aspires to be a provider of information on food matters in the Bridport area and surrounds. And its vision is good food for all forever. Priorities include increasing local production of food and demand, affordable access to this food, healthy eating, sustainable cultivation methods, and food security in response to climate change and economic stresses. Some core objectives for this coming season are improving health and well-being, strengthening community connections, developing a sustainable and resilient food system. And Bridport Food Matters runs community events also and is part of Bridport Food Festival, Plant Swaps and Seed Swap. It's now a community benefit society last year, and membership has various forms and is developing a more formal structure. So that's our mother. Slide 2, please. So this is Fishweir Lane and some happy gardeners combining skills and efforts to provide food for the local community here. Slide 3, please.
Rachel, could you just speak a little bit louder? Somebody's having a little bit of trouble hearing and I'm not quite sure, or turning your volume up a bit. Sorry about that.
Okay. Shall I speak louder? Is that better? Who are Edible Bridport? Edible Bridport grew as a working subgroup of Bridport Food Matters, and we've been going for about 4 years now. Our project believes that resilience begins locally at ground level through people connecting directly with the food growing. We can better understand how our food arrives on our plates when we participate, get grubby, and taste the difference. Activities focus on community food growing skills learnt by participation, and anyone can join in, so no gardening experience is required. The project creates opportunities to share our skills and feel part of something positive. For instance, we had a recent popular drop-in session to make colourful signs for our veg beds and planters, greatly enjoyed by all. Later, seeing our art efforts in our vegetable beds will further create pride and ownership. We hope to build on these skills to create confidence and social connection alongside growing food. All this demonstrates how resilience grows naturally when communities get better connected. Slide 4, please. Can you hear me better now?
That's fantastic. Absolutely clear as bell.
Okay. So what we do veg beds. One of our main activities is creating and maintaining community vegetable beds around our town to create free access to fresh food. We use a combination of planters, ground level beds and raised beds. We use privately owned gardens by invitation, other privately owned growing spaces also by invitation, and already established planters and a residential green verge. These are mostly accessible to the public as shared spaces. Where not accessible, food can be taken from signed drop spots near to the growing areas. The veg beds demonstrate that food can be grown almost anywhere and are visible symbols of community care. The spaces make growing visible and normal once more. Think of the example of digging for victory during the campaign during the Second World War, where everybody who could generally did participate. The need was huge. So also, our veg beds act as conversation starters. People will stop while we're working, ask questions, and often want to get involved. It sparks curiosity in what we're doing and why. Produce sharing reinforces the idea of collective benefit, so these beds show that food growing can belong to everyone. We are often asked about vandalism, but this hasn't happened yet. Well, I hope I haven't just jinxed that, sorry. Anyway, if it does happen, we've decided to just keep trying by replanting. So far, our only vandals have been seagulls and pigeons. Slide 5, please. Thank you. What we do? Well, community engagement. The real success of Edible Bridport is people. We currently have 25 volunteers, and as well as keen gardeners, we have people talented with sign writing, artistry, planning strategists, construction experts, DIYers, professional gardeners, communications helpers, and many other skills on board to act as help and support. Everyone can contribute something. We all have untapped skills to share for sure. So if people are not fit enough for garden, they can help in many other ways. Activities include planting days, monthly drop-in sessions for cake, tea and gardening chit-chat, days out to other community gardens, so we will definitely come and visit Tumbledown, something we will plan, and visits to interesting plant specialists for perennial plant stocks, working parties, seed swapping and sharing, plant swapping and sharing, and next season we hope to organise some social lunches with Bring a Dish. Our collective skills are shared informally and learning happens naturally. Public engagement is at the heart of everything we do. We try hard to communicate with residents and use door-to-door method. We construct and deliver information leaflets about what we are doing, where and when, and we try to make sure our communication can reach all. So we use lots of different methods for this to happen. Our posters are around our town, and we have social media presence on Facebook and Instagram. We are currently working on some mapping and at the moment to give information about where exactly we are growing by using what 3 words to locate produce more easily. We try to support our volunteers with tools and equipment to make their tasks as easy as possible while carrying out their community work. We provide plants and soil to begin the growing journey and physical help to construct the veg beds if required. And our aim is not just food production, but participation and ownership. Food becomes a tool for connection, well-being, and a shared purpose. Next slide, please. We call this the Fishweir Lane model. And Fishweir Lane is an example of local community creativity in action. It is local to the volunteers who are residents living close by, on site for growing and maintenance. It is a quiet residential street, and growing is on a previously unused grass verge. This shared space has become something productive, welcoming, and alive. Residents help through a WhatsApp group to shape it, care for it together, and it combines food growing with environmental improvement and community pride in a previously disused space. We found this model is easily replicated. Small local projects like this can scale through inspiration and pride. Start small, make it visible, then watch the community momentum grow. Next slide, please. Recent obstacles, flooding and its implications. Like many local projects, we face environmental challenges, and flooding has affected our new growing spaces and required some collaboration and adaptation. These challenges really highlight why local food resilience really matters. And resilience isn't a goal, it's something we need to actively practice daily. The picture shows an area of land offered as a community garden by our own town council, but it shows the difficulties food production is facing. Land that has flooded can mean growing raw food can be hazardous, and growing in these circumstances can be difficult and taxing for volunteers to sustain. Adaptation in this particular space is needed, so we will try raised beds and veg beds at ground level in the slightly higher elevated site positions. But you can see the destructive element of the river flooding through the space. So although we are delighted to get this new space, it certainly demonstrates to us that verge growing could be easier to maintain and manage by volunteers, as most residential verges don't routinely flood. Over to Rachel.
So next slide, please. So it's really important for us to root ourselves in the bigger movement for food resilience. Our volunteers are well aware of the problems we're facing in terms of lack of food resilience, and this is often why they're attracted to Edible Bridport. So we talk about this in our volunteer sessions and when we're gardening. We make connections with other national groups, including the Right to Grow campaign, and individual groups that have already successfully persuaded their councils to support their activities, such as Edible Streets in Oxford. So in terms of our interactions with Dorset Council, the fishweir plot is actually slightly controversial. I won't go into the details there, other than to say we were given the go-ahead on the understanding it was nothing to do with the council, and then we found out after we'd gardened it that it was actually comes under Dorset Highways, and apparently, according to them, there's no ability for us to use that space, and they did ask us to remove it, which we haven't done, and now they've stopped asking us. So but we've shared all this national sort of information and all these research projects and all sorts of documents with Dorset Highways to show how it is actually possible for them to give us permission to grow on the verges. But we haven't had any luck so far, but we're very stubborn. We've met a great bunch of supportive councillors and council workers over the past few years, so it's really surprising that we haven't been able to get backing from Dorset Council, because this is actually going on, the verge growing on small pieces of land that are under Highways remit is happening around the country. So it's the law is actually silent on the matter, so it's open to positive interpretation. So that's what we're working towards now. Lots of work's being done by campaigners nationally, outlining the challenges we're facing and positive ways forward, including the Right to Grow campaign. But unfortunately, no meaningful action has happened by wider government bodies to bolster food resilience. And our volunteers obviously know this, and part of the attraction, like I said, is being able to be part of a grassroots group that can make small differences now, but with a clear route to larger scalable changes. So up there's the National Preparedness Commission's Just In Case narrowing the UK civil food resilience gap, which was published last February written by Tim Lang. And in it, he concludes with 8 different steps to resilience. And step 7 actually relates to what we're doing, because he says that civil food resilience requires public engagement. There should be a national effort to build more community-based and localised food resilience, with a national strategy developed with citizens' engagement, which is what we're all about, is engaging citizens and making it easy to be involved. And Tim has specifically said he supports the Right to Grow campaign. So in this way, we are able to keep the faith that we're part of something bigger, a grassroots movement that offers easy ways to be part of the change that needs to come and will come. And we're doing our bit to make food resilience irresistible, but we could do so much more if our institutions got on board. And next slide, final slide, please. So in summary, that's me and Sheri and my son, who doesn't look too happy about standing next to two mad women. But there you go. That's us working in the rain on setting up a new plot. So we hope we're irresistible. We feel like we are, because we're attracting more and more people, especially since we've set up our volunteer sessions every month, which are a reliable drop-in session for people. But it's always a work in progress. So what do we think are the most important things we've done to attract volunteers? We talk to everybody. We don't like talking in this forum really, because we're a bit nervous about it, but we hope it's come across okay. But we generally talk to everybody, and we're really keen to learn from everybody, because everybody's got ideas about what to do, and we question our assumptions about why don't people have enough money to eat good food? Why aren't they buying local food? You know, all of those things that we can make assumptions about. But we just, once we get together and talk to people, as previous presenter was saying, you know, we can make assumptions, but we need really to make create opportunities to share all our knowledge and wisdom, which we're hoping we're doing. We make it easy to get involved, and our fishweir model is so important because it's something that is scalable. You start on your doorstep. It's really easy to go and do a bit of gardening, to water it, you know, to share the food. Passers by get inspired and get involved, and we can build that out across the town, across the area, across the county, you know, and across the country. Like I say, people are already doing this, so it really needs somebody in the council, whoever's making those decisions. It's not the individual people we're talking to, but to sort of go, yeah, let's go for this, because everybody's ready to do it, you know, and we are doing it to a certain extent. We are also a grassroots movement, so we're not top down. We're learning, like I say, learning together, and we have lots of fun at our volunteer sessions, and that's really made a difference, that everyone feels like they belong to something local, but then we go out from there and spread the word and do the work together. And we're also part of something even bigger, making wider connections with other groups. And we're locating in structural change that needs to happen, but with easy steps that we can take locally. And most especially, any of the problems to do with food security, it's not an individual problem. It's not a failing of an individual. It's the way our society works, but we can change it, and we are changing it. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you to everyone who's helped make this story a living, growing success. And of course, thank you all for coming this evening and listening to us. Thanks.
Wow. Thank you so much. Yes, thank you, Rachel and Sheri. That's, again, fantastic. And it's just wonderful to hear what you're doing, what you've done, how you're moving forward, and also the parallels with Tumbledown in terms of some of the advice around how we can make our own projects as irresistible as yours. I'm coming along. I'm already sold, definitely. So thank you. And yes, so if I could introduce, well, everybody probably knows John Sloper, who's along with Barbara, who's here from Help and Kindness, taking the lead on the Feeding Dorset partnership with the support of Dorset Can at the moment. And John, over to you.
Thanks very much. Andrew, did you have those slides? We'll put the first one up. Everybody, so yeah, as Sandra said, we are facilitating the Feeding Dorset partnership with Dorset Can, and I should say that Bridport Food Matters is also a sustainable food place, which is what the Feeding Dorset partnership is too. So we're absolutely in step, and what a wonderful start to inspire everything for all of us. Thank you so much to colleagues for sharing that, for the amazing kind of lived experience that you brought to these projects. What I've got here is something that's taking a little bit of a kind of bird's eye view to everything that's going on across Dorset at this point. So we'll whiz through these quite quickly, because I think the important bit is for us all to have a chance to chat and to share our experiences together. So I thought if we just share with you just a few things that are going on in terms of what we're hoping to achieve and build on this year within the Feeding Dorset partnership. And I think that in terms of making food resilience irresistible, it's about doing everything everywhere all at once, but letting everybody get involved, so that we're not doing it as a single fix. We're not trying to change government policy only. We're actually changing hearts and minds and culture as well, and we're changing people's sense of what they're capable of as well. And so much of that came through the previous two presentations, which was absolutely wonderful. So this is about tackling food security and food resilience across all areas of life. So in terms of what we're working on within the Feeding Dorset partnership, and I say working on, this is about showcasing, celebrating, bringing the conversations together. We're looking at this from a lens of social care, from healthcare. We talked about the importance of diet. We talked about nutrition. We talked about health and well-being that comes from growing food, being out in the community and being outside together. It's about environment and culture. It's about all the things that we do to kind of make sure that we survive into the next millennium and don't end up expiring because of the bad things that we're doing in this one. It's also about supporting one another, and just wanted to put a note in about what Dorset Climate Action Network and Help and Kindness do in terms of our role in this Feeding Dorset partnership. It's about providing networking. It's about providing these spaces where we can talk and listen and share and discuss with each other, where we can collaborate, where we can see how some of the things that we do align with each other, even if they don't have the same labels. So the community side of things is really important across all of this. It might be from a schools and an education side, it might be from a mental health side, it might be just from a physical activity and wanting to get out and be involved and to experience Dorset in its kind of beauty in the countryside and so on. It's also about being really opportunist and saying, look, this thing's coming up. Who wants to get involved? Have you heard about this? Can we all get behind this and do a bit of work together around this particular opportunity? Pragmatism. I love the idea that the vandals are welcome and that you'll live beyond the vandals. That just strikes me as enormously liberating. We don't have to live in fear with these things. And that pragmatism, I think, is just so much central to this kind of grassroots work. Alan was talking about it in terms of the learning and just sort of following your feet, really, and taking one step after another and saying, this is what we can do. So pragmatism is important. Motivation is really key. These opportunities to kind of share great stories and be together in this, so that when we're feeling a bit kind of, oh God, this has all gone sideways, that there are people around us who go, yes, but that was a good bit. And hang on, what did we learn about that? That we could do something with that, and kind of just pulling us forward together. Communication is key. So in terms of our work, these are the things that we bring to the table for you and for everybody to kind of work together. Sharing that communication. And really clearly, I mean, this is mentioned in the other slides as well, working towards inclusion. And we want everybody to feel that they've got a part to play, or that even if they're not aware they're playing a part, that they're still able to play that part. Equity is really important. This isn't about haves and have-nots. This is about us all sharing and changing the way that we look at the world, that learning about how things are structured, the conversation with the nuclear scientists and the two people from the Lantern, the people from the BB Stockholm. It challenges, we have the opportunity to kind of challenge how we see equity and how we live out an equitable social experience. There's something also about collectivism, so sharing things. You talked about, Rachel and Sheri talking about providing tools and expertise and knowledge is really important. These things we hold because we are lucky in the majority of cases. We don't have a right to this stuff, but I think we have an obligation to share. There's also something about looking at what the enablers are. So conversations are an enabler, a smile is an enabler, somebody saying, oh, I'll just sit here and, I'll sit and talk to you about what I'm doing. That is an enabler for something to happen, to inspire people. And getting people involved. You've all talked about the fact that this is about broadening the involvement. We'll only be able to make these big changes if everybody takes a turn and gets involved in different ways in this, these conversations and these actions. And it's also something about the in-between. It's about those places of dialogue and sometimes friction. The conversation about the edible Bridport conversation there, that raises some really important political questions for us about our land and our common land and who serves whom. Big questions that actually I think are really important. But also the opportunities for trying things new often sit in those in-between spaces. So what constitutes private land? You talked about sharing the good that you have, a piece of land that you could share with your community. That's really challenging, a really wonderful way to kind of explore the in-between stuff. May I have the next slide, please, Andrew? So in terms of how we work and what we kind of hoping for in the way that we pull together things in this Feeding Dorset partnership. There's something about vision and motivation and sharing things in common. So although we might not all work in the same places or in the same way, or we might not all have the same tools at our disposal and the opportunities, there is something about that being shared. There's something about having that bigger vision, that culture behind us that moves us forward together. There's also something about sharing what we know. And there's a huge amount of work that's going on across Dorset about understanding what makes Dorset tick at this point. So there's lots of research going on in health, there's lots of research going on in social care, in the children's services and so on, and also within the voluntary community sector. Lots of people looking at what the needs are and so on. Sharing that brings up all sorts of possibilities that we can do more, do differently, and make improvements collectively on that. So those insights and that data can be really helpful. Where is the flooding happening? So we don't put our community gardens in a flood risk area. Or if people have worked out how to fix the mitigation for that flooding, how can we share that so that we can grow in flood risk areas? Because let's face it, there's going to be more and more of those. There's also good storytelling, I think, that's part of this conversation, this making things irresistible. If you can weave together the sort of stories we've heard tonight, I think you could mobilise just about anybody. I mean, to come and have a cup of tea, to come and get to know somebody, to feel part of something and included, making it personal and practical, making it shareable, making it that next step, not a leap that's 100 miles, but just one step more. So that's a sort of storytelling piece. It also allows us to reflect in a kind of safe way that feels maybe a little bit more comfortable and less overwhelming than taking some of the big picture stories. So if you listen to the stories from the kind of international COP, you'd probably run for the hills quite quickly about the kind of future that we might be facing. But if we talk about the kinds of things that we've been listening to this evening, actually that feels doable, that feels manageable, that doesn't disempower us, it gives us space to kind of act and to change things. And I think the linking bit is key. So this meeting tonight, these have been absolutely incredible in terms of linking people together and facilitating stories and relationships. The idea that everybody's going to pitch up at Alan's next week, I think, is absolutely fantastic, and that we'll get to know him and his team and vice versa. And that link brings strength. And those links kind of happen inside and outside. So they're things that happen personally in our families, in our neighbourhoods and so on, and also within more formal structures. So between different sectors, with health or social care or environmental services, even highways. There's all sorts of opportunities there for us to link across those boundaries in ways that are really creative. And I think that was the other thing in that space, is that quite a lot of these answers are kind of left field there. We talk about not going through the front door when you're trying to tackle a problem. Don't necessarily need to go through the door might stop climate change or improve food resilience. Actually, it's about getting to know your neighbour. It's about thinking about that shared space that you might have that's kind of between your two houses, that you could put a cherry tree or an apple tree, or maybe that you might want to think about as in terms of doing something together to stimulate a community conversation about things. So going through those side doors, those other opportunities where we can get involved and connect into things is equally important and can be very creative. Alan talked about the fact that the food is a byproduct, it's not a focus. That's a great side door. The food has come out through the fact that we've approached it through a side door there. Starting from elsewhere, so not necessarily holding to the view that we have, but actually taking a chance to kind of throw the thing in the air and see if there's another shape to it. Could we approach this as a community issue? Could we approach it as a conversation around education? They have a different starting point, and there are layers to this stuff, as we talked about, from the community, the individual, the national, the regional, the town, all these different layers that are in here. May I have the next slide, please? This is a really quick one. So I just put, we'll share these slides, we'll make these available afterwards as well, but this is just the Feeding Dorset partnership structure, just to give you that sense again of the themes that encompassed within the Feeding Dorset partnership that contribute to food resilience. So it's everything from politics to personal from land to cookery skills and nutrition, and the equity around food and the affordability of food and so on. So everything is in that space. And the principle behind it from our point of view is to let 1,000 flowers grow. This isn't about structure. This is about enabling things. This isn't about trying to dictate and tell people what to do. This is about going, get on with it, do it. We've got your back. Here's loads of other people that really want to get involved and be part of this too. So if you have the last slide, if I may. So our opportunities this year for making food resilience irresistible is this, I think, is things that we've already heard tonight really strongly. Visibility, building maps, building pictures, putting up posters, being visible and talking to each other, listening to each other and showing what's going on. Looking for smart opportunities where we can uncover potential for doing things. So are the conversations to be had with groups in our communities? Should we be speaking to people in the adult social care teams in the council about how this fits in with some of their agendas? There's a whole piece of work in health at the moment that's being developed around frailty. Food is a really, really important part in terms of mitigating the effects of frailty and having the right nutrition. There's lots of conversations around that. We've got Claire King in the call tonight as well, who's talking and works within the context of school nutrition and food for children and families. There's so many amazing things out there in terms of the potential to get involved. There's also a load of stuff around wicked problems and reframing some of those wicked problems so that we can get behind them and get into them and get underneath them. That only happens really when we start to look at collective activity. We can't solve those things on our own, sadly. But actually between us, we can chip away at it, or we can start to put enough pressure on that we nudge the agenda and we get some momentum behind some of those things. Tim Lang's report that was mentioned by Rachel, and I think that's there's lots of things like that coming through the national food strategy, national horticulture strategy. There's a whole load of changes in terms of benefit systems and other agendas as well. We can get behind those as part of tackling those wicked problems. There's a lot we can do in terms of skills and training. Alan's already talked about this, and Edible Bridport also does this, sharing wisdom and sharing ignorance. They're going, oh my God, what we do about this now? What are we going to do about those blessed pigeons? I don't know. where do we go with that? How can we bring that together? And the mobilization piece, releasing the potential, giving people visions that they can step into and go, actually, that's doable. I can have a crack at that. Well, I'd like to come and see what you're up to, or join you in your event and help you with your next kind of project. And then the resilience piece, which has already been mentioned, and I jumped up and down in my seat when you said this, which was that resilience comes through connection, and that connection that we have together through meetings like this and through the activities that we do is what will make us stronger and give us a greater chance to attract people in, bring them together and to work together. So that we do build this food resilience and make it irresistible. And the more places and spaces we do that, the more likely it is that we're going to make a difference that will stay, and actually be a good platform for the future.
Thank you, John. Fantastic. Thank you for that overview and in view and horizontal view. So this is the moment where we have about 7 to 10 minutes. If anybody has a question for John, for Rachel and Sheri, or for Alan around their specific project or something that's been said. And also just to say quickly that many links are going up in the chat, and we can send those out to you later, as well as obviously the recording of the meeting. So yes, so Pam Rosling, you've got your hand raised. Who would you like to ask a question?
Well, all three really. I just wanted to say, looking at the title, food resilience and so on, I thought there would be more talk about what you cook and how you cook and promoting cooking, because I think one of the biggest problems we're going to have in the future with climate change is that most of our food is imported into Britain, and British people in general don't know much about growing and cooking their own food, and that's going to become more and more important. It's vital that people know how to grow basic vegetables and have more knowledge about plant-based eating rather than meat. Because I've noticed when we go to a cafe, you walk out and you see plates there with all the vegetables or salad just left, and most people just eat the meat and the chips. So what I would like to see published more on the internet and available locally is training in how to cook a really tasty meal with lots of vegetables and beans and plant-based protein rather than meat.
Thank you, Pam. So, Rachel, your hand went up, I think. Would you like to speak to that?
Yes, I would. Yeah, I mean, I do agree that's a problem, but I feel, well, we feel that the best way for people to learn is just to normalise those vegetables, which is what our idea is to have food growing everywhere, and you don't have to sit somebody down and say this is seasonal food because it's just there. You get used to it. We have a culture that is beyond all of us individually to sort of tackle, and I think there's a danger if we start placing that problem within the individuals, because we don't know why they're leaving their vegetables. We don't know how many people are leaving their vegetables. When we know food waste is a big problem, but we also know, like here in Bridport, people come and take stuff from the food waste store, and a lot of those people don't need it, so they're keen to deal with food waste as well. So there's, it's a mixed picture. But I think having the food just there everywhere will shift the culture. And so I prefer to see it like that. Obviously, because we're part of Bridport Food Matters, we do a lot of processing and cooking food, and we're going to be rolling out more of that as time goes on. So we will be linking what we grow to other, we'll be serving that food in our activities. We have links with the school gardens here. There's all of that's going on. So I think it's about doing something that changes the culture that we have at the moment. Rather than sitting people down to talk, just to educate in that way.
Thank you, Rachel. Alan, did you want to speak to that as well? Just before
I mean, similar kind of point really is that we're surrounded by the food that we eat. We don't have any meat on site at all. We only use the produce that we produce, plus some vegetables and lentils and things like that we can't grow. So we don't make a big thing of it. We just use the stuff that we have. We feed all of our volunteers with the stuff that we grow, and it's just as it is. This is food from Tumbledown for people at Tumbledown, full stop, and it's not a big issue. So we don't kind of preach, but that's what we do.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you for your question and for your comments, Pam. And I think there's also some response gone up from John in the chat, if you'd like to have a look. Thank you. I think there's another question from Chit. Chit, would you like to?
Yes, thank you, Sandra. When I saw the title Food Resilience, I thought it was pretty up my street, as it were, or my soggy field, because I think when I heard about resilience, I thought we would be talking about what happened last year and what happened the year before, where UK farmers lost 20% of their wheat yield, and if we look up abroad to where loads of our cherry tomatoes come from, they are kind of swimming in water. So I was wondering to what extent the speakers feel that what they are doing will be addressing the uncertainties of our food system as we face more freak weather.
Thank you for your question, Chip. And yes, so we've got Rachel and John, and probably you're going to get an answer from everybody. Okay, so can we go Rachel, John, and then Alan?
Hi, Chit. Totally agree with everything you're saying, of course. I think the thing is, we need a way of getting everybody on board, and that's what we're about. Because I think we all read these, we all know what's going on, don't we? And it's scary and it seems insurmountable. especially when you haven't got governments really going for it and, you know, making a difference. But we fundamentally believe with Edible Bridport that if we can get that growing everywhere, and we have been hampered by, you know, hesitation, let's say, by the council, but if we can get, if our model, which is on people's doorsteps, can be replicated across the town, you are creating communities of people in their safe space, in their street, where they know people by sight, if not to speak to. They start talking about those things. They start talking naturally. The subject comes up about what's happened to the farmers and everybody, and the weather changes, and, you know, etc., etc. We need that volume of people to be getting on board and to be pushing for change. So we aren't about growing food that's going to feed everybody because the farmers are getting flooded out or whatever. We are bringing people together over food. We're normalising the fact that we need to know where our food's coming from and that everybody can be involved in some way with it. That's what we're about. It's building up that power of all of us together, you know, to change things and to demand change and to recognise that governments could do so much more, local government could do a lot more, and they blinking well need to. You know, that's what I'm about. Yeah.
Thank you, Rachel. So, John, would you like to add a point of view?
Super quick. Yeah, absolutely. This is part of the picture as well, Chip. I think we could have had probably 200 speakers tonight, and we still wouldn't have touched the edge of some of these challenges that we're dealing with. This is part of a very wide conversation. We've got wonderful Barbara and James in the call this evening, I think, from Ralston Farm and Love Local, Trust Local, who are absolutely mobilising farmers in their across Dorset to get more attention for what they need, and also to have a wider debate. The NFU in Dorset is also really strongly promoting the idea of growing local and having a much more climate conscious approach to farming in Dorset, not just because the risks to monoculture and monocrops is really high, it's single point failure, but also because it's good in terms of having this debate about how communities and farming are part of a whole picture. And for too long, it's been separate. And we've had things like supermarkets in between that have created this kind of abruption between our land use and our communities and the people that are stewards of that land. So I think there's some really important conversations there that you're touching upon, and very much see that part of this ongoing wider conversation within food resilience and within the work of the Feeding Dorset partnership. And there are other conversations that we will be highlighting where that is happening, like there's Testbed, which is coming up on Wednesday, about looking at Dorset becoming a living lab for improvements in agriculture and health, not only soil health and land health, but people health and animal health and plant health as well. So there's some really interesting stuff happening in this space in Dorset particularly, which I personally am extremely excited by, to see how these things develop. So we'll be shining a light on those things through the partnership as well. And if there's any questions and things that people want to add in to find out about some of those things, we'll be happy to hunt down. We've got lots of connections, and see if we can find information to share to pick up where those conversations have been happening. And just finally, the NFU, and I think Claire was in the last one, doing a short series of podcasts around Dorset food, and I'll get out the link and put it in the chat for you.
Thank you. Thanks, John. If you've got a link to the Testbed Day, could you pop that in the chat as well, if you could find that? And Alan, did you want to add something there?
Very, very briefly. I mean, I think smaller projects like us are about changing attitudes of local communities and consumers. But I think right back to the early point that we made about the politics of all of this, that's the important bit for me locally. So, for instance, Dorset Council owns, I think it's 36 farms, and it's about us trying to influence kind of local politicians to say, okay, what are you doing with those 36 farms? And I see somebody put about community ownership of farms in it. Those farms at the moment are starter farms for a very traditional model of farming, and I think we can probably start to influence that as local communities to say, okay, let's do something a bit different with these farms, something maybe a bit more experimental that would involve local communities in that as well. So I think there's the local things, and then there's the wider political things that John was talking about that then come into play.
Thank you, Alan. So it's yeah, we're talking also about scale, aren't we? Thank you, Chip, for your question, and hopefully you'll say something about your project in the pop-up in a few little bit. Great, 1 minute pop-up. Bob, was your question answered there, or do you still have a question about the community farm?
Yeah, those John's and Alan's answers were in fact sort of just tips of icebergs that I really want to find out much more about. And I was the one who asked that about community ownership. It happened to a farm that was going bust in our the community bought it out, and you know, it was owned by the village basically, or many people in the village. So that would be a really interesting model, and especially what you just said about the Dorset Council owning 36 farms, sorry, and that somehow it would be. Anyway, I will stop now. I'm just sort of you know, the avenues are opening up in my head, and I'd like this to you know, fill me up with information.
Thank you, Bob. Thanks for your enthusiasm. Yeah, are there any other questions that anybody has to ask? Just trying to see. Oh, Ian, yes.
Thanks. Not so much a question,
comment.
a comment. Or yeah, I mean, really inspiring presentations, especially by the two case studies. Fantastic, obviously as well as John, but John's very good at this. I'm just wondering about the potential of the story. There's a wonderful natural rhythm to the food year, and I think we've lost that, and I think we could gain an awful lot by getting that back. And there's so much. It's relatively easy to do, but it just gives a continuity to what's going on. And sometimes, you know, you're sort of thinking, how do we keep this going? Well, it keeps itself going, that story, and I think it would be very interesting for lots of people to be able to see that story happening.
Yeah, thank you. Would anybody, John? Yes. Anybody?
Follow James Cousins, and he's got a video diary that he publishes, which talks about the life cycle of the farming year, and all the things that are going on there. If you'd like to see what's happening up in the kind of Cranbourne Chase area of Dorset, but I think you're absolutely right, Ian. I think there is something beautiful about that kind of cyclical nature and revisiting the same things again and again, and every time you visit them, you get that kind of, you know, heartbeat which you feel, but also you get that sense of we're changing, things are adapting, there's something different. What are we looking at now? How do we move forward? And I think that's a really powerful way to kind of structure some of these thoughts and the processes that we're in together. Yeah, really touched by that.
Yeah, me too. I'm going to jump out of facilitator and say that I think that's a kind of wonderful idea in terms of possibly that kind of seasonal story is a really strong link between all the different ways that people are working with food, some of whom are represented here. I don't know if any of the other speakers would like to add anything.
I mean, a lot of our events are kind of themed around seasons, and it's quite interesting kind of getting kids involved, because, you know, in the summer we had kids in last year and we were doing this competition, can you spot what's underneath the ground underneath this foliage? And that was amazing how many people couldn't tell what the difference between a carrot and a parsnip or a leek or whatever else. So, and I think kind of showing them year on year throughout the school year, so you're getting every single year coming through, at least they get that basics of this is where things grow, this is when they grow, this is when you pick them, this is what you do with them, this is how you store them, this is how you can cook them and preserve them. That's the kind of rhythm that I think we're talking about. So I agree completely.
Great. And yes, Rachel.
Yeah, so this is something we're building on this year, as we, however we manage to do it, roll out much more spaces around Bridport, many more spaces. We are trying to make those links because we're part of Bridport Food Matters overall. We like I say, we do link the cooking into seasonal activities, and we're really working on that this year so that we're bringing produce in, preserving it. Having the ideal is we have loads of verges growing food, and they all have their little festivals, and then we bring it all into a central festival as well. where we have our own harvest festival or whatever, and then we preserve things together as well. So this is what we're, and just having those spaces mean that so many people are walking past, being aware of seasonal food as well, just because it's part of their life. So that's what we do.
Thank you. Great. So unless there are any other questions, I can't see any on the screen in front of me. This is just a moment. If there's anybody here who's involved in a different food project and you'd like to introduce your work and perhaps say something about who you are, where you are, what you're doing, and you have something amazing that you've achieved and would like to share, or what connections might be useful to you. We haven't got anybody who's asked for this slot, but then I know I've just invited Chit if he wanted to say something. But if there's anybody else, please just put your hand up. And this is your moment to share something about what you're doing. Oh, we're obviously stunned into silence by the presentations so far. And great. So if there's nobody there, not everybody's got their cameras on, but I'm not seeing any hands going up. So, oh, maybe. Oh, there's nobody going to pop
Would you
up.
like to
speak?
I would love you to say something. Yes, that would
Okay.
that would make me feel there's been a pop-up session.
Thank you. Well, okay. My wife and I have got 17 acres in outside Bridport in Epe, and we've grown about 150 different fruit and nut trees and bushes. We have planted a small plot of perennial rye. So I suppose one could say we're perennially growing into our farming shoes. And it's what we're doing is really an investment in the future. The pecan nut trees that we are grow won't really come into fruition in 10 years' time. But I think what we are doing will hopefully give people in Bridport greater diversity of food sources. We can't say we're an expert, but we're trying out food, perhaps a climate food survival strategy. More from us soon. We're going to set up a website and do all those social media things that we are crap at. But every so often we'll have visits to the farm, and we're going to have a barn opening as soon as the contractor will finish.
Fantastic. Thanks, Chit. And I know Dorset Climate Action Network came to visit last summer, didn't they? Sadly, I couldn't make that, but sounds wonderful. And there may be somebody listening who can help you with the website. You never know. There might be some. This is the pooling of resources that we're looking for. So if there's anybody out there who can pop up a website for Chit, just let us know. And thank you. And Claire King. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Really lovely to meet you all and to hear all of the great things that are going on. I think we're definitely the converted sitting here. And it's a challenge to get the messages out there to everybody. I'm an ex-head teacher, primary school head teacher, so very interested in all of the education that's going on right across the scale, and all of the stuff that everybody's doing to bring community together. I'm doing a very small part of that in Poole, trying to bring people together for conversations. John was on my first Food for Thought panel evening, one of 12 people. We did quite a rushed, well, it wasn't rushed, but there were 4 panels of 3 3 people each, and it was quite an intense evening, but it brought 120 people to a conversation about food resilience and how we can further strengthen our food community. And our third one is on March the 19th. We haven't yet got a venue, but I'll keep it posted on socials, and I'll ask John to share it with people. But it'd be great if people came. It's really casual. There's opportunities for people to talk to each other, to listen to a couple of presentations, and to really network and to have a community meal together.
Thank you so much, Claire. Could you just say again where that is? Whereabouts it is?
We haven't got a venue yet. I'm just waiting for the venue, but we've locked in our speakers. But it will be in the sort of Poole, Bournemouth area.
Great, fantastic. Yes, do let us know. That's wonderful. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else who'd like to share points of information or anything else around the work you're doing? Great. Okay, so the idea for now, and this is when some people leave, but some of you may stay, and was just to have a short time. It will be a shorter time in terms of breakout rooms, but just to be able to have a conversation for 10 minutes or so with a small group of people around 2 questions we had. We wanted to try and get, if it were possible, to gather even more stories or activities that you know are being run in Dorset, which somehow are irresistible to you or have got you involved, and to find out why that's happening. And equally, if there are any stories or activities you're engaged with that you feel that you could do with some help, that we'd also like to hear about those. So as part of our wish to enable over the next year. So I'm going to set up some breakout rooms and just assign you randomly. I wish I was better at maths. How many times does 5 go into 25? 5. Let's go for that. And if you could, we'll spend about 10 minutes or so. And for those of you who are staying, I will put the topics up for you to see, but basically just looking at what's really worked in terms of stories, in terms of projects that have really brought people, so that we can begin to get those key points. If you'd like to bring them back to the main room in about 10 minutes and just have a conversation together, see what happens. I've opened the rooms. It's just always a weird moment when everybody comes back. So welcome, and sorry to interrupt you all in your conversations. Yeah, I just got a few minutes left, and I just thought maybe if somebody from each group wanted to, if you have some key points or something you wanted to share. There's somebody from the group that was with Luke, or I think Luke was in a group with John Allen. Would somebody like to share something?
It turned into a bit of a kind of help session for me, I'm afraid. So,
Did it?
It was a little bit, yeah. No, it's really useful. It's just the power of conversation, just talking to various people, throwing up issues, and then everybody coming in with suggestions and ideas and things that work for them. Was really excellent. So transport was one of the themes, just getting people to the places and getting the people that need to get to the places.
Yes.
To the places.
Yeah, that's important, isn't it? Yeah.
Just things I hadn't thought of, like the cycling without. I'm sorry, I forgot what it's called now.
Cycling without age.
Cycling without age. Sorry, that's it. And the idea of barrel bikes and getting people educated on using barrel bikes to get to us. So lots of kind of really good ideas and helpful suggestions. And then the idea of peer reviews. So people that are doing similar things coming around, talking to you, having a kind of review of the site and what you're doing and where you're going, and then coming up with kind of positive suggestions as to what ideas they could generate and what we could do better. That was really a really useful comment, really helpful.
Fantastic. This sounds like really good examples of some of, John, what you were talking about, the sideway doors coming in sideways to sort of wake up other avenues of thinking about how we go about things. Thank you. It's good if we just speak them, then we've got them also on the recording. And if you want to put anything in the chat that struck you about a conversation you were part of, please do. But I'll move on to the second group, which I've got written as Ian and Anthony were in that group, amongst others.
And Michelle and Bob. We ended up talking about allotments. Dorset has got plenty of allotments in most parishes. And we were talking about whether there could be a county-wide network of allotments. We talked briefly about allotments that were empty, difficulties with water.
Yes, fantastic. Yeah, and I think in the past people have also commented about the possible role of parish councils with allotments, with their local allotments, and linking up possibly through those channels. So great.
But I think
who else in that group would like to put?
Yeah, I think it was throwing up a really interesting bit about scale and variety amongst the network, so that you've got, potentially small allotment sites where there might be several of them, though, and then you've got community farms. I'm not sure we know how many community-owned farms there might be, or community farms in the county. There's then the back garden, and then there's the fancy lot like a Tumbledown and all that type of stuff. And I think those jigsaw pieces, it's really quite interesting to see how they can fit together, and who and where the struggles might be, and how the scale, the different scales can help each other or not. So I think clearly that the allotments might have some really interesting challenges which the bigger places don't have, or whatever it might be. But getting a hold of that picture would be quite fun to play around with that, and everyone can feel part of
something as well.
Just one sec. Can I just let Ian finish?
No, finished.
Yeah, great. And just to say, it's suddenly more like a sort of jigsaw than Les. I think I'm just going to move on to the next group, Bob. If you'd like to put your comment in the chat.
I was doing that. Yep.
Great. So group with Barbara, Ken?
Yes, it was Barbara, Ken, myself, Rachel Bodle, and Chit. So just to say, obviously we had Chit and Lucy are an irresistible local story. So that's that. Ken is always an irresistible local story. He's got thrown off his allotment for being too tidy, but he's adopted his local verge. And then Rachel talked at my suggestion, because I knew she would have inspiring stories from Shaftesbury, and a number of points that emerged. One is that the longest lasting, so some transition projects have not survived, but the longest lasting one is one on a community farm on land made available by a local landowner. Rachel also said that Shaftesbury's got a network of different groups of volunteers, including those working on the conservation on the common land and the community farm volunteers, but they don't really talk to each other. So there's work to be done in sort of local networking. She pointed out that the best attended, the most popular Planet Shaftesbury events are food-related events, and they're also the ones that get the broadest range of people, perhaps across ages and politics and so on, sort of reminding us that food is a very good place to begin and end. And then finally, she talked about a Planet Shaftesbury Eat Well leaflet, which tries to get people to buy local food and support local growers, and identifies local farms or whatever which are selling their food locally. There's a question about editorially who you include or exclude, but that's clearly close to John and Barbara's heart in terms of just telling the local people where they can get local food. That's us.
Thank you very much. That's fantastic. And then, sorry? Was there someone?
And yeah, Andrew, I think you said I was thrown off my allotment for being too tidy. It was the opposite, mate. I was thrown off for being too untidy.
That's what I meant to say, but in the panic, I misspoke. Sorry.
I didn't want my reputation being trashed here. That's
absolutely. No, let it be heard. Ken's untidy.
Great, thank you. And then the final group, which I think had 3 people in it, Rachel and a couple of others. I didn't take down all the names, but
yeah. So it's me and Sheri and Pam and Anna.
Yes.
Yeah. So we were just sort of partly talking about people being resistant to growing sustainably, or growing for biodiversity, and that the difference between that we've experienced ourselves is that Sheri was involved with a previous project where she lives, trying to get wildflowers, and people were so resistant and like hated the whole idea. Partly it happened just after lockdown or during lockdown, so I think there was a lot of stress involved. But we do feel there's a difference when you're growing little bits of food. So we were encouraging people to sort of try again, who have possibly tried with growing wildflowers and things, to trust that people aren't quite as resistant to food. Pam was talking about living in a village and saying that quite a lot of the older people are resistant to this way of being, and I pointed out that people do die off. Sorry to say that, but things.
I say seasonal cycle. I think
the natural cycle as well. Yeah. And Pam was talking about how she sort of learnt to grow from scratch, but and sort of they grow a lot, her and her husband, but they aren't surrounded by people who are like-minded at the moment, so that's an issue. And Anna was talking about she wants to do more. She's in Gillingham, I think, but she's already putting out fruit and sharing extra produce with people, and she's on a footpath. So we were like, oh, that's a perfect place to get other people to bring things in and share stuff. And she was talking about how there's really nice cherry plum trees in Gillingham, I think itself, where the fruit just ends up all over the ground. And it would be great to, so we were suggesting getting in touch with the council, seeing if they could use their manpower to pick it, so that then she could process it and then the food could be shared. So trying to make those connections, even very small activities, actions can build into something bigger and connect us all. And to trust that there's a lot of skills out there. So even if we're not doing everything now, it's the community building that we need as much as anything.
Yeah, thank you so much, and that's just wonderful stuff. It's a whole new layer to the meeting this evening, I think, and Bob also making the point, how can we make allotments more productive across the county, and about water harvesting being needed, and also previously about fruit and blackberries that could be picked in a similar way as you were just describing, Rachel. So Dilys, yes, did you want to?
Well, as we're getting near the end, I'll share something rather amusing with you.
Please do.
We've talked a lot about home economics, learning to cook. And although I apparently had, I think we called it domestic science lessons in my day, I didn't learn anything more than making a bit of toast and boiling a kettle to make a cup of tea. It was pathetic. We moved to Dorset 12 years ago, and the house we bought is called Cookwell, and I can't.
Thank you so much. That's a great story. I mean, that's just the perfect end to the evening, I think. But thank you, Dilys. So I would like to say, before we will finish on time, but thank you so much for bringing all those points back. And as I say, a recording will be made available on the Dorset Can website, as well as any links that have been given this evening. And I really wanted to say thank you so much to our speakers again for creating such a dynamic evening, from Tumbledown, from Edible Bridport, and from Help and Kindness Feeding Dorset Partnership. And John, was there anything else that you'd like to add, or anything that you want to flag before we close for tonight?
Just to add my gratitude for everybody for spending time together and having such, I think, mostly joyful conversations, actually, although yes, there are these snags and things. I think just the solidarity of being together and this allyship we sense, even if we're being thrown off an allotment, or if we're standing in a wet piece of land with the river flowing by. It's the fact that we're in it together, and I think these touch points are really valuable. I find them hugely valuable. I'm very grateful to you. There is something that we will be doing very practical, and it's something that we're discussing today with Dorset Can, which is doing quite a lot more work in terms of building out some of this information about what is out there, what projects are out there, and how we can link better together. So do watch this space. We'll be circulating stuff with the within our Feeding Dorset newsletter, e-newsletter, and on the various web pages on DCAN and Help and Kindness. But if there are opportunities you'd like to get stuck into, or issues you'd like to kind of pick up in that conversation, so I'm very clear, Bob, I will bang on your door about the allotments conversation, but if there are other things as well that people would like to do or to focus on, we'll go where the need is in terms of us picking up those activities, opportunities and so on, and showcasing them as part of our work this year. We only like to go where we're invited and needed. And so if you invite us in, we'll be there like a rocket. So Chip, count on that, and others who've expressed an interest in having conversations. So watch this space. Do keep in touch with each other, and do keep sharing the good work, because it is so inspiring, and it's wonderful to be able to share that with you tonight.
Thank you, and thank you very much also to Barbara Evans for all the help that you've given to make people come to this meeting as well, advertising it, and all the help that part of the team just wanted to point to. And then also to Andrew Carey, thank you so much for stepping in and doing the tech and making it all happen smoothly as ever. So with that, I'll just say thank you to everybody and have a good rest of your evening.